Well, we did it. Route 66 from Chicago to LA. 28 days, 4 adults, 1 dog, 1 cat, all in a Winnebago. This video documents our trip in the fall of 2021, and it shares some info and history that I hope you'll find entertaining and helpful too if you're planning a Route 66 trip yourself. Oh, and if you are planning a Route 66 trip, check out the link in the description to visiting66.com. I got a ton of free info on there to help you out, including a Google map with all the places that are in this video and like literally hundreds more things to do and see on Route 66. I think it'll be really handy for you. But without further ado, let's get on the route. My sister and I flew out from LA to Chicago, where we met up with what would be our home for the next month. My parents had driven the Winnebago out so we could start the route right in Chicago. Now, Chicago's a major city with tons of history and stuff to do, but it doesn't really give you the Route 66 flavor, the small town vibe that you're looking for. But nevertheless, since you're here, you might as well do some exploring. We had a few days to spend touring around Chicago, so we began at the iconic Bean, or the Cloud Gate, as it's officially called, but it's actually really cool to just stare at this thing, the way it reflects and distorts the city and people around it. And it's made up of 168 stainless steel plates that are all welded together and then perfectly polished, so there's no visible seams. And you can walk right up and under this thing, and because of that, they actually have to Windex this thing twice a day, and then they even clean this thing with 40 gallons of Tide twice a year. In a short walk from there, you got Buckingham Fountain, which is almost 100 years old, and the style was actually built to mimic the Palace of Versailles. And we actually spent a lot of our first day on these big bus hop-on, hop-off bus tours. I like it a lot for a new city. It kind of gives you some general history and info, but also kind of helps you get a good lay of the land for your future exploring in the city. For lunch, we went to Portillo's, which is the real deal if you want to get a Chicago-style hot dog. It comes with mustard, this neon green relish, onions, tomatoes, pickles, celery salt, and these peppers. And I don't really like mustard or relish or pickles. I don't like that briny flavor, but this thing's good. There's something magical about this whole combination that just works. You gotta get one. Then we checked out this architecture boat tour, which I actually really recommend. Chicago's got some of the most innovative architecture in the world, and it was actually the birthplace of the skyscraper. The next morning, we started off at the Starbucks Reserve, which is pretty cool. It's like a Wonka factory for coffee lovers, but long lines, high prices, pretty touristy. It's just okay. And for Chicago-style stuffed pizza, head to Giordano's. They claim that their founders invented stuffed pizza back in 1974. Some people challenge that claim and say other locations are better, but Giordano's is good nonetheless, and they have over 60 locations, so it's easy to find a restaurant. And by the way, if you're in an RV like us, you can spend the night at their convention center. It's just an empty parking lot, but it's an incredible location that you don't really normally get in cities. It's called McCormick Place, and I'll have that in the Google map at visiting66.com. We spent the whole next day at the Museum of Science and Industry. This place is awesome. They got a bunch of cool exhibits, like a combine that you can ride in. They have a real 727 hanging from the ceiling that you can explore. But my hands-down favorite was an actual U-boat that was captured by the Allies during the World War II that's on display. It's actually there on display. This thing is huge, and it's got such an amazing story of how it even got into American hands and then to the museum. Plus, they got a few Mold-O-Rama machines. I'd learned about these a little while ago, so I was so excited to finally get to do these. They're the coolest vending machines I've ever seen in my life, and they're just pure delight. They literally injection mold a plastic figurine right in front of your very eyes. They're from the 60s, and there's only like a few dozen of these vending machines left. And look, the first time I did this, the figure came out all deformed and misshapen. But isn't that awesome? These 50-year-old vending machines aren't perfect, and the museum staff happily gave me a new perfect figurine anyway. For dinner, we went to the Berghof. Now, this place was founded by a German immigrant, Hermann Berghof, and he actually began selling beer in the Chicago World's Fair in 1893 for a nickel, and then he even gave you a free sandwich. But then, during Prohibition, Berghof was able to keep his bar alive by brewing near beer and root beer, which you can actually still get today, and is really, seriously, super delicious. And the German food that they serve here is just so high quality and good. I loved it. After dinner, we headed over to the Sears Tower, now called the Willis Tower, to go check out the Sky Deck, because it's actually the highest public viewing area in the United States. It's a really cool view up here. We actually enjoyed it, especially at night. And this is interesting. This isn't the tallest building in the United States. It's technically One World Trade Center, but they only have 94 stories. The Sears Tower has 108. The discrepancy comes from the classification of those antennas on top of the building. The ones on top of the Sears Tower are just called antennas, so they don't count towards the total height. But on top of One World Trade Center, they're considered a spire, so it does count towards the total height of the building. It's kind of weird. Oh, and they have these glass balconies that extend out 4 feet from the side of the building, and I didn't think I was really afraid of heights, but I could not get myself to step on that thing. It's freaky. So that was it for Chicago. It was time to get on Route 66. So the actual beginning of Route 66 has changed a couple times over the years. In 1933, it started right here at Jackson Boulevard and Lakeshore Drive. But before that, the route actually started at Jackson and Michigan Avenue when Route 66 was first officially classified. But when Jackson Boulevard became a one-way street in 1955, this became the new starting point for Route 66 right on Adams Street, 1 block north. That's where you're going to see the Route 66 begin signs today. And I'll have all those starting points on the Google map for you to check out. Our first site was the Castle Car Wash, built in 1925, and was actually the secret hideout of Mr. Al Capone. We stopped at Henry's for one last Chicago dog in Cicero, just a Chicago suburb. Our next stop was for some more food at Del Chicken Basket. This chicken is so good. The breading is just perfect. It's not too thick and crusty. It really complements the chicken well. And they got a great dining room with these red and white checkered tablecloths and a really good neon sign out front too. And in Joliet, you could stop for some ice cream at Rich and Creamy, where they have the Blues Brothers on top. Because this is Joliet. They actually filmed part of Blues Brothers at the prison here. And then right across from Rich and Creamy is this old gas station. And check this out. You can stand on the original Route 66 roadway. Wow, look at that. They all say bar on them. I wonder if that's the brand or manufacturer or something. For us, the best thing in Joliet was the old Joliet prison. It's worth the ticket price of $20. You get to go in and roam around the whole prison, and you can explore the old buildings and jail cells. And they do have some signs posted so you can, understand the history and information and know what you're actually looking at. So this prison actually held inmates from 1858 to 2002, and it was also the filming location for the prison where Jake Blues was released at the beginning of the Blues Brothers. Joliet also has some other Blues Brother surprises sprinkled around town. Next up is a Route 66 classic, the Gemini Giant. So this is actually an example of what are called muffler men. And muffler men are fiberglass statues that are over 20 feet tall, and there was a bunch of them made in the 50s and 60s as roadside icons for automotive muffler shops, but now they've been repurposed and are all over Route 66. And then down the road a bit, you hit the town of Gardner, where you'll find this restored streetcar diner, which is over 100 years old. You can't go inside, but you can look through the windows and see the wooden benches and stools and the chrome countertop. It's really cool. And then in the town of Dwight, you got a cool little downtown area with this old railroad depot and the first national bank designed by Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright in 1905. Dwight also has Ambler's Texaco gas station, which now serves as a visitor center, and is actually one of the longest operating gas stations on Route 66. They even still have these service bells that ring when you step on them or run over them. And it was actually built in this cottage style to kind of look like the residential houses around it, so it blended in a bit more. It's a really fun stop. So this is hilarious to me, but they're actually kind of common along Route 66. It's a pedestrian tunnel that goes under Route 66, so it made it safer and easier to cross. This was built in 1933. There was that much traffic on Route 66 back then that they felt they needed a tunnel. It's crazy! Here you can actually see some original Route 66 pavement on the right there, which is undrivable, but it's open as kind of like a bike path now. It's pretty cool to see. There's even this old stretch called Memory Lane that you can actually drive on, like original Route 66 pavement, and they got some Burma Shave signs they put up too. And you gotta stop at Funk's Grove for some maple syrup, but call ahead because like the sign says here, they do sell out every season. But they did have a little bit of their bourbon barrel aged syrup left for us to try, so we got to sample that, which was great. And the Funk family has been making syrup since the late 1800s. They literally just put thousands of taps in the trees all around them and harvest a whole bunch of maple syrup. And I actually did a whole interview with the Funk family, but I lost the footage. I'm so bummed. But here's a little bit that I was able to find that was saved somehow.
As often the first question people walk in with is, so why do you spell syrup wrong? Yeah. But it's just an old spelling. So when Webster wrote was writing his first dictionaries, he had both spellings and two different definitions. So syrup he defined as the product made by boiling sap, and then syrup he said was the product made by adding sugar to fruit juice. Oh, okay. Kind of like a canned peach syrup, that kind of syrup. And so he had this difference in definitions way back then. And Hazel, who put this in a trust, as far as she was concerned, the syrup was the right spelling. It's the pure maple syrup, and so we've kept it because that's what she wanted. Sure, I like it.
And then heading into the town of Atlanta, we got another muffler man, this time a Paul Bunyan with the hot dog. And then heading on into town, we find that they also have a Route 66 arcade museum, where admission is free, you just pay to play the games. And they've got old pinball and video games back from the 1930s up to the 80s. And then headed on into Lincoln, Illinois. This is hilarious to me. They have a watermelon monument because it was near the site that Abraham Lincoln christened the town with the juice of a watermelon. Lincoln's also got the world's largest covered wagon with Mr. Abe Lincoln sitting on top, and it's recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records. By the way, it's crazy how much stuff is on Route 66. You can't drive more than like 10 minutes without stopping. Coming up next is the Cozy Dog Drive-In, and you gotta stop here. So I did actually get to interview Josh Waldmeyer, the owner of the Cozy Dog, and I didn't lose the footage for this one. So I'll have a link to that whole interview and tour in the description. But this place is famous for their cornbread-coated wieners on a stick. Josh's grandfather, Ed, actually invented the batter that allowed you to dip a corn dog right into the deep fryer, so it could be done quick. You didn't have to bake it. Just a really cool place with a ton of memorabilia inside. Family run. You definitely gotta stop. If you like Abraham Lincoln, Springfield is the place for you. It is the Abraham Lincoln center of the universe. First off, we got Lincoln's tomb, which is massive. He's basically been here since he was assassinated, and he's also joined by his youngest 3 sons and Mrs. Lincoln. It's really impressive. Next up, you got the Lincoln home. This is actually the home that Lincoln and his family lived in from 1844 to 1861. And they've restored it to look exactly like it did when he lived there. And not just the home, but the whole street, too. It's really a cool place to visit. And then, of course, we got the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, which is actually really well done. It feels like Disney level even. But don't let that turn you off. It's got a lot of good quality information, too. Just well done. A good balance of fun and informative. And when we came out of the museum, there happened to be this car show going on, where Bob Waldmeyer's VW bus was on display. Bob was the inspiration for Fillmore, the bus in the Cars movie, and is also Josh Waldmeyer's uncle, who is the owner of the Cozy Dog, which I interviewed. You'll find Bob's art all over Route 66. He was a really cool, interesting guy. The whole Waldmeyer family is just pure Route 66. And then on the way out of town, we stopped at the Cozy Dog again for some more Cozy Dogs and cheese on a stick, which is oh so good. That's juicy. Out of Springfield, we hit the Litchfield Route 66 Museum, and there are a you-know-what load of Route 66 museums along the route, but honestly, they're all pretty cool and unique and kind of worth stopping at every one, I gotta say. And same with gas stations. If you like old gas stations, Route 66 is the place for you. But they're really all pretty cool and worth stopping at. Especially this old Shell station from 1926, because you could walk inside and smell that old gasoline wood smell that's been permeating for 100 years. And then you just stumble upon stuff like this massive rocking chair, but don't get too excited. There's an even bigger one coming up. Stay tuned. And then you got Henry's Rabbit Ranch. I'm bummed we actually missed this because it was closed, which happens for a lot of these things on Route 66, so get used to it. But it's a Route 66 information center and gift shop with rabbits, with bunnies, so maybe we didn't miss much, but it sounds pretty cool. I wish we could have seen it, but we did get to see all of his Volkswagen rabbits plunge nose first out front like Cadillac Ranch. And then a little bit off the route, but definitely worth a detour to Collinsville, is the world's largest bottle of ketchup. How can you not love this thing? 170 feet tall, 100,000 gallons of ketchup or water. And I got to meet up with Judy and Mike, the curators of this giant ketchup bottle, to learn all about the history of this thing and the restoration process and why the hell there's a giant bottle of ketchup here in the first place. It was a great interview. They're super fun. I'll have the link to that whole interview and tour in the description. Route 66 in Missouri takes you right into St. Louis, the gateway to the West. We started off our time in St. Louis with a trip to the Apple store to pick up some new iPhone 13s. But then the real touring started off at the Gateway Arch. You gotta do it. By the way, it used to be called the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial. Weird name. Good move changing it. And here's a fun fact for you. The arch is actually 630 feet tall and 630 feet wide. Weird, it looks way taller. It's some kind of weird illusion, but it's actually like a perfect square. The arch has actually a pretty good museum about westward expansion, which is very appropriate since you're on Route 66, and they talk a little bit about construction and everything like that. It's worth checking out, about an hour or so. You should go up into the arch just so you get to ride in these elevator tram type of things. They're like circular, and as you go up, they rotate and click into position so you're always staying level. It's really cool. And the view from the top is not bad. Pretty cool to look out and see 630 feet above you, and you can actually kind of look down underneath you because the way the windows are angled. It's a little spooky. And you can bet your Clydesdale's butt we went to the Anheuser-Busch factory. Even though they're just a massive corporation now, Anheuser did start in St. Louis in 1852, so they really have a cool history at this place. And the tour is pretty good. You get to check out the Clydesdale stables and learn about the whole brewing process. And of course you get to do some tasting. But at least the day we were there, they just overpacked our tour group and it was just way too many people. So I wouldn't call this a must-see, but it was cool if you're interested in beer. Well, that was it for St. Louis. Like Chicago, you could spend weeks or months exploring this city, but we had to get back on good old Route 66. Our first stop on the road was Ted Drew's Frozen Custard. And holy concrete, this stuff is good. They're called concretes because they're so thick. They even serve them to you upside down. They've got a great old-fashioned building, a killer sign out front, and they've got a massive menu with all the toppings and flavors available to you. I myself got banana with Reese's peanut butter cups mixed in. Highly recommend it. You gotta stop at this place. It's so good. Alright, here's a good story for you. As you're driving near Eureka, you're not really gonna see anything, but this used to be the town of Times Beach. In the 70s, they didn't have paved roads, so they hired a company to come in and oil the roads to control the dust, which was fairly common. But the oil contained dioxin, which is a not good for you toxin. And so the whole town had to evacuate and leave this town as a ghost town. Eventually, the federal government purchased and decontaminated the whole city, and now you're gonna find a nice Route 66 state park there instead. It's an insane story that's easily missed. Hot and cold. They got a sense of humor here. Missouri's actually home to over 6,000 surveyed caves, and you're going to see signs for them everywhere. The most famous is Merrimack Caverns. Unfortunately, we just didn't have time to stop, but you really should. It's a highlight. Next up, you got the Jesse James Wax Museum, which unfortunately for us was closed, but it's just a classic kitschy Route 66 attraction, and they're going to convince you that Jesse James didn't actually die in 1882, but was living under a different name until 1951. Keep an eye out for the Bourbon City Water Tower, which actually got its name when a general store started selling this new brand of whiskey called bourbon, and the locals just started calling it the Bourbon Store. Then the town of Cuba has got some good sites worth spending some time at. First, stop for some lunch at the Missouri Hick Barbecue. The owner, Dennis Miser, smokes his meat for 12 hours and serves it with a wonderful variety of barbecue sauces. And right next door is the classic Wagon Wheel Motel, built in the 1930s. It's undergone a careful restoration to keep all the important stuff, but also add modern amenities. It's a good old-fashioned mom-and-pop motel worth staying at. Cuba also has the nickname Mural City because there's a bunch of murals all over the city, so be on the lookout for those. We even had a nice lady come up to us and give us a brochure and mural map, which I guess are available at the Cuba Visitor Center. Make a stop at the Hayes Family Shoe Store to check out two shoes that belong to Robert Wadlow, the tallest man in the world, at 8 feet 11.1 inches. He's a big boy. And then you have the world's largest rocking chair. Well, actually the world's second largest. There's a bigger one in Illinois, but still, this thing's 42 feet tall and 20 feet wide. And the Fanning Outpost General Store that it's attached to has an excellent selection of soda. Then you have the Uranus Fudge Factory, because who doesn't want fudge directly from Uranus? This is a kooky place. Sure, they have the fudge store, but they also have the world's largest belt buckle in Uranus. They got a double-decker bus, a jail cell, and jokes everywhere. But they also have a great muffler man and a really impressive neon map of Route 66. Then you have the Munger Moss Motel. Built in the 1940s, some of the rooms actually have garages attached. And they have a fantastic red porcelain and neon sign out front. The City of Lebanon houses a great Route 66 museum just for free right inside of their library. They've got life-size recreations of tourist cabins and a diner and a collection of salt and pepper shakers from Route 66 restaurants. It's pretty well done. In Springfield, Missouri in 1947, it was here that Mr. Red Cheney thought it would be easier for customers to drive up and order his hamburgers through a kitchen window, creating the first drive-through eatery in America, Red's Giant Hamburg. And the reason it's called Giant Hamburg as opposed to Giant Hamburger, as you would expect, is a pretty good story. Red, the owner, made his sign in a cross like this, but realized that the sign he made was too tall and would touch the power lines, so he just sawed off the ER in Hamburger. Now, this isn't actually the original Red's. That closed in 1984. This is actually a recreation of the original Route 66 restaurant built by a local barbecue chain owner. But there is a nearby park which does have the original Giant Hamburg sign, which you can check out. There's also a great flagship Steak and Shake, which shows off some of the features of yesteryear, like the neon signs, counter, floor tiles, old booths. It's pretty cool. But honestly, the shake wasn't really that good. Springfield also has a small but helpful visitor center. A bit outside of Springfield is an absolute gem of a stop, Gary's Gay Parita Sinclair. This is actually a recreation of a gas station owned by Fred and Gay Mason from the 1930s. The separate cobblestone garage from 1926 is actually original, but the rest burnt down in 1955. A very, very cool stop. Next up is a strange place called Red Oak 2. A man named Lowell Davis left his hometown, Red Oak, in Illinois, but when he returned, he had found that it had become a ghost town. He was so heartbroken that in 1987, he started moving the buildings from Illinois to Missouri to this place to rebuild his hometown, calling it Red Oak 2. So today it's just this odd simulation of a specific time and place. In Joplin, you could see the apartment where Bonnie and Clyde lived, and this is where they had a shootout, killing 2 police officers before fleeing, but they left behind a camera in their apartment, which is how authorities finally discovered what they looked like. Well, first off, we gotta establish that Kansas has the shortest stretch of Route 66 in any state. It's only 13 miles. Well, actually, I interviewed the president of the Kansas Historic Route 66 Association, and she'll be quick to point out that it's actually
13.2. You can't forget that, too.
You gotta get the point, too.
That's right. We gotta get every bit we can.
So you gotta give them that, and they do cram a lot of good stuff in their 13.2 miles, that's for sure. Like, of course, Kansas has a yellow brick road. There's no place like home. Heading into Galena, Kansas, you're going to find a place called Cars on the Route. Kansas has the special distinction of being the place where the Pixar guys actually found the truck that inspired Mater from the Cars movie. And they have the actual truck that they saw. But wait! It's not a tow truck. It's a boom truck. See, that thing on the back is way taller than the regular guy. It's for mining. It's called a boom truck. They thought it was a tow truck. And they called their truck Tow Tater to avoid copyright issues, but later Pixar said it was fine, but they didn't take the time to change it, so it's still Tow Tater there. Galena and Kansas in general are great. They really embrace the Route 66-ness of what they got, and they even have these great painted shields on the road through most of Kansas. And you gotta make a stop at Nelson's Old Riverton store. It's a delightful 1925 little grocery store where there was actually a lot of locals hanging out and was pretty busy. But make sure you get a sandwich from the deli counter. They're just classic homemade sandwiches and they're delicious. Heading into Baxter Springs, we got the Route 66 Visitor Center inside this 1930 gas station that's been restored. It's a good stop because you can actually go inside and walk around this thing too. And if you're lucky like we are, you'll get to meet Mr. Dean Walker, also known as Crazy Legs because he can turn his legs completely backwards.
That doesn't hurt?
If I do both of them 10 seconds, I got a flip one.
Oh my goodness.
That ain't like it used to be. I used to turn on my own. Took me a long time to figure out how to walk. Oh, I did it. I walked and fall down, walked and fall down.
And the guys from Pixar met Dean, and he became the inspiration for Mater and the reason why he can drive backwards. Kansas has a lot of connections to the Cars movie. Oklahoma actually has the most drivable miles of Route 66 compared to any other state, along with some of the most iconic stops and roadside attractions. Heading into the town of Commerce, you'll find the Dairy... Oh, no, it's not Dairy Queen, it's the Dairy King. That's right, and they got some oh-so-delicious Route 66 homemade-shaped cookies that you gotta try. And right across the street from that, we got a gas station built into a brick wall. Hence the name, the Conoco Hole-in-the-Wall gas station, built in 1929. You can also see the childhood home of Mickey Mantle. That's right, the Mick himself grew up right here in Commerce. You could even peek inside of his old home. And check this out, you can actually see a bunch of dents on the side of this barn where Mickey spent a bunch of time practicing his hitting. And they even have a 9-foot-tall statue of Mickey Mantle at the Mickey Mantle Field at the local high school. So this one might look lame on video, but hear me out, it's actually pretty cool. This is one of the oldest, still drivable roadbeds on Route 66 from 1922. Even older than Route 66. But this guy's only 9 feet wide, just one lane wide. And that's because money was tight, they only had enough to do half the job, and rather than cover half the distance, they decided to just make it half the normal width. So we didn't go on this in the motorhome, but that means you could drive it today, but it's still pretty hairy. And I gotta say, there's something a little magical about being able to walk on this road that's 100 years old. Now there's a lot of bridges on Route 66, but this Pryor Creek Bridge from 1926 is particularly cool. It's a through truss bridge and the beams cover the top, so it kind of looks like a tunnel. Look, it's another pedestrian tunnel. There was one of these in Illinois, but I love these. I just find it so funny that Route 66 was so busy, decades ago even, that they had to build tunnels underneath for pedestrian traffic. And this one actually has murals inside, but unfortunately it was closed for refurbishment when we were there. But we didn't totally miss out on the murals because just right across the street, they have this old U-Haul painted by Bob Waldmeyer just hanging out here. Next we have what is truly a landmark roadside attraction, Totem Pole Park. Built from 1937 to 1961 as a tribute to the American Indian, the main attraction is the 90-foot-tall totem, with 200 carved images and a turtle at its base. In this thing we're talking 28 tons of cement, 6 tons of steel, and 100 tons of sand and rock. And it was just newly repainted, so it's looking pretty good. Now there's not a ton to see here, but I want to tell you the story of the Transcontinental Foot Race, aka the Bunyan Derby. It was a race from LA to New York in 1928 and used Route 66 for much of the route. But it was Mr. Andy Payne who won in 573 hours. Andy was from the town of Foyle, so that's why you'll see this monument commemorating him today. Alright pals, it's the famous blue whale of Catoosa. And boy, what a spectacle this thing is. Built in 1972 by a zoologist as an anniversary gift for his wife who collected whale figurines. And back in the heyday, you could actually enter inside the whale's mouth and slide down that slide or jump off the back tail, but they closed that off now. And they were repainting this thing while we were there, which kind of ruined our pictures, but it was nice to see that it's being maintained and taken care of. How was it?
Blue whale is so cool. Wow. It's so cool they're fixing it up too. Well done.
And quick tip, stop at Ron's for some chili. It's oh so good, and they got a few locations. Welcome to Tulsa, a cool trendy town that really embraces their Route 66 roots. And you can't really miss the Golden Driller statue. It's a friggin' massive 76-foot-tall statue of an oil man resting his arm on top of an actual real oil derrick. Built in 1966 at the time when Oklahoma was the oil capital of the world. This guy can withstand 200-mile-per-hour tornadoes. And kind of lame, they had him decked out with some advertising while we were there. And make a stop at Buck Adams. It's really just a newer gift shop on Route 66, but it's really well done. They've got themselves a great muffler man and some good neon, and some of the best souvenirs you could buy on the route, in my opinion. And don't miss the metal gold sign just down the street, which has been beautifully restored. Then we got the Cyrus Avery Plaza. Mr. Cyrus Avery is often known as the father of Route 66. The sculpture is pretty damn cool. It's extremely detailed. There's even a juicy bug in the grill of his car. Now look, there's a lot of cool, old restored gas stations on Route 66, but after a while, I think you're just going to be saying to yourself, I've seen enough of these damn gas stations. On our way to Stroud, we hit some pretty gnarly rain, but don't worry, we still found the Rock Cafe. So the Rock Cafe is actually built of stones that were unearthed during the construction of Route 66. The Pixar guys stopped here and they took a lot of inspiration for Sally the Porsche from the Cars movie from the owner of the Rock Cafe, Don Welch. And the food here is actually really freaking good. Next up we got the Seba Station Motorcycle Museum, and even if you're not a huge motorcycle fan, I think you're going to like this museum. It's actually really, really cool. And it's free in a restored 1921 gas station. They've got like 70 or so vintage motorcycles dating back as far as 1908. And don't miss the stone outhouse in the back with plumbing. You like that toilet, Dad? Fancy. Next we got one of my favorite sites, the Round Barn. It's a barn that's round. They said it couldn't be done, but in 1898, Mr. William H. O'Dare soaked lumber and then carefully, painstakingly bent each piece in a rounded shape to construct the 60 by 40 foot round barn. And this thing takes a lot of upkeep and has been lovingly restored to what it is today, which is beautiful. Upstairs there's a whole dance floor and the ceiling just looks awesome. And why make the barn round? Excellent question. Well, they figured it'd be more resistant to tornadoes, but there's really no evidence to support that. And also, apparently it's a bit more efficient to work in a round barn. You can just go in one direction around and around to feed your animals. Next up, we got Pops. And they got themselves a 66-foot tall LED soda pop bottle out front, which is cool. Wasn't turned on when we were there, but still. Cool. Inside's nice. They got tons of soda. But here's the thing. It's kind of gimmicky. Felt a little sticky, a little dirty inside. If you're really into soda, the place to go is Galco's Soda Pop Shop in California on Route 66. We went, and it's better than Pops. It just is. But Pops is fun. If you're here, it's worth a stop. Heading into Oklahoma City, don't miss the Land Run Monument. It may sound kind of boring, but it's really freaking impressive. These sculptures are just massive, and there's so many of them, and they continue to add on new ones every year, so it's just getting bigger and bigger. But these sculptures are reenacting the land rush of 1889, which is basically when they opened up the state of Oklahoma to settlement. There were literally like 50,000 people lined up, and at high noon on April 22nd, they just ran and claim their land. But it really does just kind of gloss over the fact that it was Indian territory and they kind of just stole this land away from tribal members. And then we've got the wonderful Milk Bottle Grocery, which is only a 350 square foot grocery store, but was actually pretty successful. And in typical Route 66 fashion, they added that big old milk bottle to the top as an advertisement to attract some attention. Then we went for a little night cruise to check out some neon, and the Yukon's Best Flower sign, which is really, really cool. The next morning started in the town of El Reno, where you can get an onion burger, which was born during the Great Depression when meat was scarce, so they beefed it up with some onions. But a happy accident occurred, the onions caramelized, made a oh-so-delicious crust on that burger, and you can still get these today, and you should, because they're damn good. I always love looking at the local markets and grocery stores when you're traveling. You can find some cool stuff. They have real cane sugar Dr. Pepper here. This is rare. Hey look, another old gas station. And then we just stumbled upon this corn maze at P-Bar Farms. I had never done a corn maze before, so I was pretty excited. It's really cool. And this one was awesome and huge. Look at it. So we come in over here, and there's the beef. It's what's for dinner. Damn, we're gonna be here for 16 hours. It was fun for like the first 30 minutes, and then it just gets to be a little monotonous, and you don't know where the hell you are. We're in the corn maze. We're lost in the corn maze. There's no way out. But I'd never done one. Glad I did. It was fun. Woo! Yeah! We're out! We're free! Yeah! And they also had this wicked fast slide.
Whee! Woo-hoo! Yeah! This is it!
So fun. And then down the road we stopped at the Cherokee Trading Post, which is great in and of itself, but they have buffalo there, which is the best part of all. They had a mama, a papa, and a baby buffalo there, and these guys just stole my heart. I just wanted to hang out with them all day.
Yeah, hi, buddy.
Next up is the Oklahoma Route 66 Museum, and out front they have a fully restored 1940s Valentine diner. These were small prefab diners made by the Valentine Manufacturing Company. They cost $5,000, and the owners would pay for their new diner by giving 10% of their daily gross income. And then inside the museum they tell the story of the Mother Road decade by decade, which is kind of a cool way to do it. It's narrated by Michael Wallace, and they got some good tunes playing in there. This is actually one of the better museums on the route. And the next morning, it was another Route 66 museum, the National Route 66 Museum, where they have
The largest Route 66 shield.
But there's a few of these on the route, so I don't know how that's possible. But this is another fun museum where you can drive on the route and burn your thighs on a fireman's pole.
Woo! You did it!
And then we drove by another pedestrian tunnel. I love these things. Then we went to visit the Sand Hills Curiosity Shop in the town of Eric, but unfortunately it was closed. But still looks cool on the outside. But just down the street we found what locals like to call the Bone Break Hardware Museum. And you can't go in, you just gotta look through the windows. But the story is that the Bone Break family owned and ran this hardware store, but one day just closed the door and walked away in the 1960s and just left everything as it was. It's kinda creepy even. Texas gives us the good stuff right away, because right when you get into the town of Shamrock, you hit the U-Drop Inn. The iconic U-Drop Inn. This Art Deco masterpiece is beautiful. Built in 1936, it was a gas station and a cafe, and you might recognize it from the Cars movie. This was the inspiration for Ramon's Body Shop. And inside is the Route 66 Visitor Center and a nice little cafe where you can get a tasty sandwich and some soda, and you can even sit in the booth where Elvis Presley once sat. Oh yeah, it's a great stop. Heading out of town, there's a good recreation of some Burma Shave signs along the road. Next up, we got the Devil's Rope Museum, which is a tribute to barbed wire. It's actually one of the finest barbed wire collections in the world, so I'm told. There is a lot to read about barbed wire here, almost too much. It's kind of overwhelming. But housed in the same space as that is the old Route 66 Museum, which has got some good artifacts from Route 66 Texas businesses, including this automobile P-card, which I'm still trying to figure out. Down the road a bit, you can't miss the Leaning Water Tower. So here's the scoop, it's not a mistake. They moved the water tower to this location in 1980, and this thing was designed so that the center water pipe would be beneath the surface of the ground. But the new owners thought it would just be too expensive to do that, and they liked the gimmick of this thing leaning. They thought it attracted more attention, which it sure as hell does, because we're talking about it right now. But I just love the look of this thing on the horizon leaning like that, it's awesome. Next up is the VW Slugbug Ranch, which is a tribute to Cadillac Ranch, which is coming up. We're going to learn all about it. But you can spray a little spray paint on these guys, or if you don't have any like we do, slap a bumper sticker on them. Then we made it into Amarillo for the night and stayed at the Cadillac RV Park, which is actually quite cool. They have a muffler man and some ungraffitied Cadillacs. The next morning, we did some exploring around Amarillo and found out that the city actually was and is the helium capital of the world. They produce about 90% of the world's supply of helium. So we drove by the old historic Amarillo helium plant, which in the 30s furnished almost literally all of the world's supply of helium. And they actually have the 6-story structure that celebrates the centennial of the discovery of helium in the area. And when it was erected in 1968, they actually collected articles to create 4 time capsules. The last of them is not even supposed to be open until 2968. In that last capsule, they put a $10 passbook savings account at a local bank, which is supposed to be worth at least $1 quadrillion by then, assuming the bank and money still exist, I guess. And then, of course, for lunch, we went to the Big Texan Steak Ranch, which is just awesome. It's got such a good vibe. There's a huge fiberglass steer out front. They got a great sign, and inside is this awesome 2-story dining room with a bar and a shooting range and a gift shop with a live rattlesnake. And you can get yourself a free 72-ounce steak. That's right, free. But that's only if you eat the entire steak with a baked potato, a salad, and a shrimp cocktail in less than an hour. Since we're not insane, we didn't do that, but still had some pretty decent steaks here. Really just like a super fun place with like a classic gimmick that you see in the movies. Next up is the Can't Miss Cadillac Ranch. Kinda in the middle of nowhere, you drive by and you see these 10 tail-finned Cadillacs just sticking up out of the horizon. It's awesome. But this wasn't actually the original location. They moved it in 1997 when the land it was previously on became pretty valuable. And look, these things are covered in spray paint. That's what everyone's doing here. It was super muddy when I was there, and I wanted to partake in the spray painting too, so took my shoes off and waded in that mud. But the spray painting wasn't an original intention. One of the artists who originally designed and built Cadillac Ranch said that he kind of wishes the site was more protected and people wouldn't litter and spray paint the cars, which I kind of agree. It'd be cool to see these kind of more pristine, but look, you're here, just embrace it and do it. They're already painted. Have some fun. Heading out of Amarillo and down the road a bit, you'll stumble upon the Magnolia Station, which is a really cool restored 2-story gas station, inside and out too, which is cool. You can take a peek inside and look around. They've also got some cool old original barrels of gasoline, because before gas stations, they just had to ship barrels of gasoline, and this guy just kept those behind his general store, and customers would come around and fill up their automobiles using a hand pump. Pretty cool old stuff. Nearby there was a Route 66 classic, Dot's Mini Museum. Unfortunately, this seemed to be totally closed and almost non-existent anymore. I'm told this used to be a massive collection of treasures and collectibles from all over Route 66 by Dot Levitt, but unfortunately she passed away and it seems like her stuff just isn't holding out. However, you can go and still see the famous boot tree which is there, which is very cool. It's a bummer, but just a good example of how Route 66 is always changing and evolving and shrinking and growing. Next up in the town of Adrian is an important milestone for any Route 66 traveler, the halfway point.
Welcome to the middle of the road. We did it! We're there! Halfway.
Here's the midpoint line. Here it is.
Woo!
Oh yeah, it's exciting. They got the midpoint line painted on the ground for you, even got a nice little photo op across the street, and you could check out the Midpoint Cafe, which I'm told has some of the best pie on Route 66, but unfortunately, they were closed when we went by. Down the road, the last town you'll find in Texas is Glen Rio, which is just basically a ghost town. There's only a couple people living here, and a bunch of old abandoned, ruinous buildings of unknown identity, but you can get out and kind of walk around, so they are kind of fun to explore. You'll also see the remains of the Little Juarez Cafe. The Pixar guys recreated this exact building in the Cars movie. It's just briefly seen in the background, but it's actually called the Glen Rio Motel. Isn't that crazy? Welcome to New Mexico, the land of enchantment. And our first stop is a truck stop, but not any normal truck stop. This is Russell's Travel Center, and they've got a free car museum, like a legit, real good car museum with tons of collectibles. This is the Russell Family Collection, and it's actually really well done for a free museum inside a truck stop. They got tons of collectibles and all these old vintage cars. Very cool and definitely worth a stop. Next, you'll hit the wonderful little Route 66 town of Tucumcari. This little town has loads of Route 66 icons, the first of which being TP Curios. This actually used to be a gas station, but when they widened the road, they lost their gas pumps. So today it's a gift shop with a great concrete teepee and a killer neon sign. Oh, and apparently Clint Eastwood stayed at the hotel next door. Tucumcari is also home to the completely refrigerated, air-conditioned, and iconic Blue Swallow Motel. Each room at the Blue Swallow comes with its own attached garage, and each one has its own separate different mural inside. This motel is just really well taken care of and has such a cool vibe, and really one of the best neon signs on the whole route. And apparently the Blue Swallow's logo references a classic sailor tattoo. When sailors saw a swallow, they knew home was near. Next, a bit unusual for the arid New Mexico desert, is a natural lake called the Blue Hole. It is beautiful, crystal clear blue water. It's also 81 feet deep and known as the scuba diving capital of the Southwest. So you know I couldn't miss my chance to do a cannonball into this thing, but I think I kind of scared the lady underneath me. And damn, that water is crisp at 62 degrees. Whew. But super fun and refreshing. You could see how this would be a really popular stop for the Okies traveling this Route 66 back during the Dust Bowl. It'd be so nice to take a dip in this thing. Here's a little side tip. If you're not from the South in the US, pick up Bluebell ice cream from the grocery store. It is so good. I highly recommend banana pudding flavor. It's good stuff. And while we're on the topic of food, you're in New Mexico, so you gotta get yourself some green chilies. So we stopped at this local farm right outside of Albuquerque where we got some great chilies and bolita beans, which are kind of like pinto beans, but they're creamier and sweeter. Oh man, they were so good. And when we made it to Albuquerque, well, we needed some more food. So we went to Loyola's Family Restaurant. We got a sopapilla, which is like a fried bread, and it's so good. But they're also famous for their breakfast burritos with their red and green sauce. And here's a little tip. Ask for your burrito Christmas style, and you can get a little bit of both. And Loyola's was also used as a filming location for Breaking Bad a couple of times. Pretty cool. We spent the next few days in Albuquerque because we came for the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. It starts bright and early, like 5 a.m. early, and they do these burns where you can see the balloons light up in the darkness, so it's just pretty cool. And then you're out in this massive field, and you see all these balloons start to be inflated, and it just goes on and on. There's hundreds, if not thousands of balloons at this thing. It is crazy. It's really cool to be amongst these. Now, I'll kind of skip over this because the first day wasn't actually the best. It was a little too windy. So not a ton of balloons went up, even though it still looks like a ton of balloons went up. There's even more. So I'll tell you more about this on day 2. So after the balloon festivities for the day were over, we went to go do some exploring around the area and found the musical highway. Listen what happens when you drive this stretch of Route 66 at exactly 45 miles per hour. Pretty crazy, huh? There's little rumble strips in the pavement that have been engineered to play America the Beautiful. I love stuff like this. We were heading up to visit the town of Santa Fe, but there's actually a lot of good stops on the way. The first of which being the Tinkertown Museum. This is a kooky place. It's this eclectic 22-room museum with an assortment of a bunch of different miniature figurines that artist Ross Ward made for over 40 years. It's amazing, impressive, so many details. The figurines move. It's so cool. And these displays are huge. Plus you got walls made of over 50,000 glass bottles. And my favorite was Otto, the one-man band. Next up is the little town of Madrid, which is a small little artist town. But if you've ever seen the movie Wild Hogs, you may recognize this diner. They actually built this whole thing just for the movie. And when production wrapped, they just left the building here for the town to use. It's so cool, even in the movie, the name of the town is Madrid. And you can go inside and buy yourself some Wild Hog souvenirs and see where they actually filmed. You can see the door that William H. Macy breaks. And even do some little reenacting out front for yourself, so why not? And then a great place to eat in town is the Mineshaft Tavern. Great vibe inside with live music. And this is New Mexico, so there's green chilies on everything. So I got fried green chilies on this burger, and it was so good. Oh man, I missed that burger. And then we finally made it to Santa Fe, which is actually the oldest capital in the U.S. from 1610. Santa Fe is kind of a more relaxed artist town with some good architecture, although it did feel a bit touristy. I think there's good stuff here. I just wish we had more time to kind of get past that and settle into the town and find the good stuff. But a big quick highlight for us was the filming location of the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. Man, I love that movie. Can't wait for the sequel, Triplets. The next morning, it was bright and early for our second day at the Balloon Fiesta, and they started off by this awesome cow. Look at this. This is a hot air balloon shaped like a full cow. It's huge. People were going crazy for this thing. So this day was actually what's called the special shape rodeo. So it was a bunch of balloons like this that are all special shaped. So it's really cool. I mean, look at these things. They're incredible. What they can do with these is so awesome. There's even a balloon with more balloons on it. And some of these balloons even play off each other. Like there's this famous set of 3 bees. You got Tom and Jerry. You got Tweety and Sylvester. And Sylvester even has a feather of Tweety's in his mouth. Love it. I'm a big fan of the Star Wars balloons. They had Yoda and Darth Vader. But my favorite was this upside-down Humpty Dumpty guy. There's something about him that I just like. And again, just a massive amount of these, like hundreds, thousands maybe? And then things got even better. All these hot air balloons started lining up for a ring toss. So they come in here and try to control their height and speed, and then are literally tossing rings from the basket of the hot air balloon onto these big poles. It's pretty fun to watch, and extremely impressive and skillful. These guys are good. And look at these guys who got it on. He just places it on. That accuracy is incredible. That afternoon, we made it to Pimentel & Sons. They're a small family-run company that makes guitars completely by hand. And they don't normally give tours, but we just walked in to check them out and were super nice, and they brought us back to their workshop and showed us everything. This was so fascinating and so cool to see this. Each guitar maker is a family member and makes a guitar from start to finish. We're not even musicians or guitar players, but damn, this was cool. For lunch, we went to a good, trendy little spot called Range Cafe, which actually used to be a gas station and tire shop. Later that night, it was more balloon shenanigans for what they call the Glodio. And this is where you get to see the balloons glow at night. It was too windy for them to take off, so they're all here on the ground, but it still looks pretty cool to have them set off their flame and light up like that. I think it might be cooler in person than it comes across on the film. And then they even finished the night off with the fireworks show. And that wrapped up our time at the Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque, so it was time to get going. But what's a Route 66 trip without a little car trouble? So we got to spend a few hours at the shop getting the transmission on the RV repaired, but luckily it was a quick fix and we were back on the road shortly. Soon we hit the Continental Divide, where rainfall on the west of this drains to the Pacific Ocean and rainfall on the east flows to the Atlantic Ocean. And you can really feel the difference when you walk past it. Then we made it to Gallup, just like the song, and took a visit to the El Rancho Hotel. This is where all of Hollywood's A-list stars used to stay back in the day, and it's got a really cool lobby. Kind of reminds me of the movie The Shining. And all the rooms are named after celebrities who stayed here, and they got their photos all over the lobby too. Cool place. And then on our way to lunch at this used car lot, we stumbled upon this muffler man. Lunch was at Jerry's, which is a favorite of the locals, and it did not disappoint. This might have been the best food I had in New Mexico. A stuffed sopapillo with green and red sauce, and loaded fries with red and green chili sauce. Oh, so good. You can't miss Jerry's. Soon after crossing the Arizona border, you'll come across Petrified Forest National Park. But we didn't stop there. Sorry. But you totally should. We've just been there a few times and we were short on time, so we had to get going. You can understand that, right? But we did stop at Stewart's Petrified Wood Shop, which unfortunately is a bit run down, but it's still there. They're still kicking. You can't take petrified wood from the national park, so that's why you gotta stop at Stewart's. They got all kinds of petrified wood items for sale for you, whatever your heart desires. They've even got ostriches on the property, and you can buy their eggs if you want. It's quite a place. Next up was the town of Holbrook, which for some reason has dinosaurs all over the place. Holbrook used to be a lawless Wild West town, so it's definitely worth making a stop at the Navajo County Museum, which is located in the old historic courthouse. You can see this really cool original jail cell from more than 100 years ago, and it still has some of the prisoners' artwork on the walls. And then we can't forget the absolute classic, the Wigwam Motel. So this was actually a chain built in the 1930s to the 50s. There were 7 of them, but only 3 exist now, but 2 of them are still on the route. The other one's in California, so we'll get there. And apparently the guy who made these just didn't like the word teepee, so we called them wigwams instead. And of course you can feel the inspiration from these for the Cozy Cone Motel in the Cars movie. And we didn't stay here because we had an RV, but these people were nice enough to let me take a peek inside. Basic, but nice. And they got Wi-Fi. Oh, and then down the road you'll see them. You can't miss them. You're gonna get excited. for the world-famous Jackrabbit Trading Post. It's so fun. Their billboards just get you so amped up. You can't miss it. And then you finally get there, and there's the famous billboard. The "Here It Is" sign with the jackrabbit. In fact, they pretty much exactly copied this in the Cars movie. And then when you get there, there's a giant fiberglass jackrabbit for you to sit on. It's a great little gift shop that you gotta stop and support. And they'll even paint a jackrabbit sign just for you with exactly how many miles away your home is from the store. Next up is the town of Winslow, Arizona. And if that sounds familiar, that's because it's where the Eagles stood on the corner in their song Take It Easy. I can't play the song for you, but here's our rendition.
Standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, such a fine sight to see.
It's a low Ford, my lord, it's a flatbed Ford, singing out of the Bugatti. We're done.
Sorry about that. But it's pretty fun that the town embraces this. Word is that the guy who wrote the song was actually standing on a corner in Flagstaff, Arizona, but he figured Winslow sounded better. And just down the street from there is the world's smallest church. So they say. Down the road, it's hard to miss this geodesic dome. These are the remains of Meteor City, which used to be kind of a trading post thing. But I mention it because it looks like they're trying to bring it back and get some funding to reopen this place. So if in the future, any of you watching happen to go by and see this place and know what's going on, please hit me up and let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to see if it gets going again. And then we got some more remains, this time from a Wild West theme park called Two Guns. Not much of this is left, but you can still see part of the zoo where they held the mountain lions. And then we got some more ruins. This time is Twin Arrows Trading Post. You may recognize this one from Forrest Gump. And they also have the ruins of a Valentine diner, which we saw at the museum back in Oklahoma. Now that's cool. And you can't forget Winona. But there's not much here really, except for this Walnut Canyon Bridge, which is cool. And there's some actual old original roadbed too. Next up, we arrived to the town of Flagstaff, which is a fun little college, foresty brewery town. They've got a pretty good visitor center inside an old train depot, and they even offer a free walking tour, which is actually pretty decent. I'd recommend it. Narrated by Mr. Ted Danson himself. Oh, and look, there's even another Forrest Gump filming location in town. And then we get to another great little Route 66 town, Williams, Arizona. Williams is often referred to as the gateway to the Grand Canyon, but Williams is very proud of the fact that they are the last town on Route 66 to be bypassed by I-40. In town, you'll find Pete's Gas Station Museum, which has been very well restored, and they've got lots of old, good, retro gas station memorabilia to check out inside. Williams is also home to the world's largest steel Route 66 shield. And then kind of fun for us Southern Californians, we got some hail and then even some snow in the morning when we stayed overnight in Williams and in the RV. Then we arrive at the quaint little town of Ash Fork and check out this beauty shop called DeSoto's with a 1960 DeSoto sitting on the roof. You can also check out the Ash Fork Historical Society's Route 66 Museum. There's a lot of these free volunteer-run museums along Route 66, so they're not the most professional, but they are fun to visit. And then in Seligman, it's another world's largest Route 66 sign.
Oh yeah!
Seligman's a small town. It's basically one street, but lined with a ton of Route 66 gift shops. And they've all got some uniqueness to them. Like this one that has a Motoporium inside, featuring some vintage cars and motorcycles. But the mightiness of Seligman comes from the man named Angel Delgadillo, often referred to as the guardian angel of Route 66. Angel was born on Route 66 just as it was being constructed, and he opened this barbershop in 1950. But when the Mother Road started to decline, he founded the Historic Route 66 Association of Arizona, and he started selling Route 66 souvenirs in a gift shop, and also opened the Delgadillo Snowcap Drive-In, where you get a smiley face with your french fries. Heading out of town, be on the lookout for some Burma Shave signs. So if you aren't familiar, this is just a famous classic advertising gimmick by Burma Shave, who sold shaving cream. And they were just these small red signs where they posted these sequential, funny, rhyming poems and always finish with the Burma Shave logo for you. These are just classic Route 66. Then we got the Hackberry General Store. This is a cool place. It's kind of like a living museum with their vintage gas pumps and the old signs, and you can see how this place has evolved over the years. And it's actually used to be owned by Bob Waldmeyer, who was actually the inspiration for Fillmore in the Cars movie, and whose nephew we met back in Illinois. And the kitsch continues down the road with a 14-foot tall sculpture called the Gigantus Heticus. Looks like Squidward's house to me. And they've also got a Herbie and some jokes around. Next, we get to the great town of Kingman, the heart of historic Route 66. We stop to check out the El Travator Motel because they actually have the world's largest Route 66 map painted along the whole motel. It's pretty cool. And word is Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, and even James Dean have stayed at the El Travator Motel in the past. And it's worth making a stop at the old Powerhouse because this is actually the visitor center and a Route 66 museum. But first off, they got a great big drive-through neon Route 66 shield in the front parking lot. It was a little tight for us in the motorhome though. And then one of the better Route 66 museums inside. It does a good job of going through kind of the historic evolution of Route 66. I liked it a lot. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the town of Oatman. So Oatman's a fun little gold rush tourist type town that's famous for their burros that just wander around the streets. But the road to Oatman is a little tough, especially when you're in a 40-foot long motorhome. It's steep with a lot of switchbacks, so we had to miss this one, unfortunately. So we went around the other way to Bullhead City and got ourselves some delicious coffee from Dutch Bros. Get over that Colorado River, and that means you're now in California. Our first town is Needles, the gateway to California. It may not look like much on the outside, but it's worth making a stop for lunch at the Wagon Wheel restaurant. The inside ambiance is great. Really feels like that classic 1970s roadside restaurant. And the designs on the menu were made by our friend Bob Waldmeyer. And the comfort food here is so good. This pot roast is crazy. Even some members of the Irwin family stopped here, so you should too. California may have the reputation of Hollywood glitz and nice beaches, but here it's just a straight up desert. I mean, imagine fleeing the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. Your dream is to get to California and you get here and it's just a barren wasteland just like where you left. But don't worry, there is some good stuff. On that desert horizon, you start to see the little town of Amboy with the little oasis of Roy's Motel and Cafe. The first thing you notice is that iconic Roy's Motel Cafe sign. This thing has been beautifully restored and had its official relighting ceremony in 2019. The whole town of Amboy is actually owned by a Route 66 enthusiast named Albert Okura. He literally bought the whole town in 2005 for $425,000. He's been working to restore the whole place and actually reopened the gas station in 2008. So you can buy gas here now, and they've got a good little gift shop with souvenirs and sodas and snacks. And now they're working to restore those 6 motel cottages so you can stay there soon. So to anyone watching this in the future, if you happen to go to Roy's and it's seeing improvements, let me know how it's going in the comments. I'm really curious to see what happens to this place. In Newberry Springs, you'll find the Baghdad Cafe. Aside from being one of the best episodes of California's Gold with Huell Hauser, it was also used in the German film Baghdad Cafe. I'd heard it had been struggling, and even though the door was open, we didn't see a single person there. So let me know in the comments if you know what's going on with this place. I really hope it sticks around. Oh, next up, we found
The site of the original Del Taco, established 1961.
Nice.
Now it's just a burger place, but they still have the sign to commemorate the first Del Taco. And you can't skip Elmer Long's Bottle Tree Ranch. So here's the story. Elmer's father collected old glass bottles, and when his father died, Elmer inherited the collection and decided to memorialize his father by creating this art installation. It's a pretty cool, simple idea. The bottles just sit on these welded metal hangers, but it looks really cool when the sun shines through them. Unfortunately, Elmer himself passed away in 2019, but it does look like the place is still being kept up and even worked on. And make sure you stop for lunch at Emma Jean's Cafe. Just a classic small 1940s era diner with some great food. What you want to get here is the Brian Burger. It comes with Ortega chili, Swiss cheese, and this thick Parmesan crusted bread. Oh, so good. Plus, this is the restaurant that Uma Thurman walks into after being buried alive in Kill Bill 2. If Tarantino liked it, you know it's good. In San Bernardino, you can visit the site of the very first McDonald's. Unfortunately, the original building was torn down in 1972, but there is this free museum on the site today, and it's actually pretty well done. They've got original equipment, a bunch of old Happy Meal toys, and even some info on the creepy original Ronald McDonald. And this museum is actually owned by Albert Okura, who is the same guy who owns Roy's Motel in Amboy. Just down the road, it's another Wigwam Motel, where you can sleep in a teepee. This was restored in 2004, and I think it's in a lot better condition than the one in Arizona. Looks really nice. I want to stay here. We saw a few more points of interest, but settled into an RV spot for our very last night on Route 66, and to
Let the shit fly.
Oh god, that is disgusting. Why is it clear?
the next morning for breakfast. It was the Donut Man. This place is famous for their fresh peach and strawberry stuffed donuts. They're by seasonal availability only, but we were able to snag ourselves a strawberry donut. And damn, these things are so good. The freshness of the strawberries just combines so well with the fried, doughy goodness. Oof. The beautiful Colorado Street Bridge is just an iconic part of Route 66. To check it out, this cul-de-sac is a good place to park and you can just walk over to the bridge. I'll have this location saved on the Google map at visiting66.com for you to check out. Now, unfortunately, this bridge is also known as Suicide Bridge just because of the number of people who have taken their own lives here. That's why they've put up these huge chain link fences to help prevent that. But architecturally, it's a really cool bridge. Around the corner in Pasadena is the Fair Oaks Pharmacy, where you're gonna want to stop for a phosphate at their 1915 soda fountain. So a phosphate is kind of like an old-timey soda that consists of this flavored syrup, ice, soda water, and just a dash of phosphoric acid. They're really good. Oh, and the soda adventure doesn't stop there because we got Galco's Soda Pop Stop. This place is the place to get soda on Route 66. They have over 700 varieties, and the owner is extremely knowledgeable. He'll help you pick out the perfect soda just for you. I love this place. We go like once a month. And that was really our last stop for California and Route 66. So there's obviously tons of stuff to do and see in LA, but we live near here, so we've seen a lot of it, and it's pretty tough to stop and park when you're in a 34-foot motorhome in LA. But it was a really cool drive through LA. You can still sort of feel the Route 66 vibe, even though you're going right through a major city. But of course we didn't give up. We had to drive to the end of Route 66. So the official end is right here at the corner of Olympic and Lincoln. But the symbolic and photogenic end to the route is just 2 blocks west, the Santa Monica Pier and the Pacific Ocean.
We did it! Woohoo!
Wow, well that's it. That's the end of Route 66 in California and the end of Route 66. We did the whole thing, and it only took us 28 days. Really, this could have been a 4-month-long trip if we wanted to see everything. But boy, what a trip it was. Hope you enjoyed coming along with us. And thanks for watching. And hey, don't forget, you can check out visiting66.com for that free Google map with all the points of interest that are in this video and all the previous videos. It was really like the handiest resource to have on this trip. I think you'll really love it. And if you're into the roadside attractions and oddities, maybe you'd like to subscribe to the Curiosityness channel. I think you might like some of the stuff that I'm doing here. But that's all I got for you. Thanks again for watching.